There has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 303. Is veganism contagious? Hi kids, it's Michelle. There's been a lot in the news lately about contagious things, hasn't there? Like measles and Ebola and hantavirus, and one that was, it's new to me, New World screwworm. And I don't know about you, but even before I looked that one up, I was pretty sure it was bad. The clue is clearly in the name screwworm, huh? So when we hear the word contagious, usually we think of danger, we think of disease, exposure, infection, things we want to avoid. But of course, there's another side of contagious. We talk about laughter as being contagious. So of course, it doesn't have to be negative, right? And this whole idea came up to me after reading an article last month in the New York Times by Paulette, I think you say Perhach, Perhach, Paulette Perhach in the New York Times. It was called, "Your Friend Group Has a Financial Culture. You May Not Have Chosen It." Now, the article was clearly about money and finances, not veganism. But you know by now that I look for parallels in our culture everywhere to help us move in a plant-based or vegan direction, because I think how you go vegan is how you do everything. So anyway, as I was reading this article, I kept substituting food for spending and plant-based for frugal. And anyway, that's what we're looking at today. Our spending habits are highly influenced by our social circles, but we can also help shape what that culture looks like. It doesn't work only in one way. So the article by Paulette Perhach talks about a certain kind of contagion that they call social contagion. So social contagion is the spread of behaviors, emotions, attitudes, and habits through a group or a community. So unlike hantavirus or screwworm, it doesn't spread biologically. It spreads socially. We observe other people. They observe us. We imitate them. They interact with us. We look around. We see what seems normal or acceptable, admired, expected. It's a whole dynamic, a dance, if you will, within the culture. And I know maybe you don't think that's you. You dance to your own tune, you might like to think. And it's not exactly true for me, but we do all default to a number of shared standards of behaviors in our communities. Some more than others, of course. But instead of thinking about that default standard just from a negative standpoint, I think it's also useful to recognize that if behaviors can spread in one direction, they can also spread in another. So the New York Times article, I'll try to link to it in the show notes. This particular New York Times article brought in some research by Nicholas Christakis. Nicholas Christakis is a sociologist and a physician, and he's known for his research on social networks and on the social, economic, biological, and evolutionary determinants of human welfare. And that includes the behavior, the health, and the capabilities of individuals and groups. And his work suggests that our habits, our health choices, even our emotions ripple outward through the people we know in our communities and through the people that they know. You know, that idea that people can predict things about you based on the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with? Well, there's some truth to it. A 2024 study cited in the article found that health behaviors spread more effectively when they're introduced by well-connected, well-thought-of people in a community rather than just random ones. So, in other words, it matters who starts the change, and it matters that someone does start the change. Because we do often think that our choices are purely individual. We think, I'm good at this, or I'm bad at that. We think, oh, I'm disciplined here, or I don't have any discipline there. But the people around us are constantly interacting with us, giving us signals about what is normal, what is preferred, what is aspirational, what is condemned. And food cues can work the same way in our communities. Every family, for example, has some sort of food culture. Every friend group has a food culture. Every workplace has a food culture. Every holiday table has a food culture. Every online, social media feed has a food culture. And most of us did not choose those cultures on purpose. Most of us did not choose most of them. We tend to absorb them. We tend to learn from others what counts as a real meal. We learn from others what counts as comfort or connection or celebration or generosity or sophistication. We learn from others what counts as being difficult, too. So if you grew up in a culture where meat was the center of the plate, as I did, or where artisanal cheeses mean sophistication, and where a vegan meal maybe was treated like a special accommodation, those ideas affect you. Not because there's anything wrong with you, because you're just a normal human, and that's what human beings do. We take cues from each other. We create communities. We understand certain levels of hierarchy within those communities, and it's a big part of what got us here as human beings. So that's just one reason that plant-based changes can feel harder than they look from the outside. You're not just changing ingredients, you're also changing or navigating the changes in social signals around food. Because, we sometimes use food to signal belonging. We use food to signal that we are generous or easygoing or fun or educated or worldly, traditional or not extreme. And we might signal, some of us, that we're not one of those vegans. We might signal that we're not going to inconvenience anyone, that we're just going to go along. Don't worry about me. We accept the joke. We eat around the edges of the meal. We treat our own values as the inconvenience. Wait, am I talking about me? So I'm not saying this to scold anyone. It is something I have done more than once. And it's part of navigating a community with food rules. And I'm saying it because I think it's worth noticing more than condemning or judging. And it's good to be curious. Where are we signaling belonging at the expense of maybe our own values? That might be the most important question in the episode. Because I would say many people are not failing at veganism. They're human beings being pulled by the food culture around them. They're being pulled by old family patterns. They're being pulled by restaurant economic and business strategies. They're being pulled by the desire to be polite or a good guest or a good host or a good friend, mother, spouse, a good sport. That's one of the things I always say. I'm a vegan, but I'm also a good sport. I don't know. Is that something I should be proud of? Maybe not. And of course, that pull is powerful because all of those ideas are the strategies we use to interact with our contagious food culture, right? Food's never just food. Food is memory. It's identity and manners and comfort and love. And, it's no wonder it can be hard to see it objectively or to change. But the good news is that social contagion is not just something that happens to us. It is also something we can intentionally participate in. We can be on purpose. We can, yes, catch habits from the people around us, but other people can catch habits from us. We can become part of the culture we want to see. And it doesn't have to be by lecturing or turning any meals into debates or, becoming the vegan police. We can really do it very steadily, I think, by making plant-based choices visible, normal, prepared, and pleasant. Even one person calmly ordering a vegan option can make it easier for the next person. I'm going to digress right here because I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast, but I'm not going to say who he was. A relative, close person, was a young person in the Second World War. And when he was discharged in England at the end of the Second World War, people said, okay, who doesn't know how to read here? Who does not know how to read? And this person said he was ashamed. He was, by this point, about 20 years old. It had been war for 4+ years. Before that, he had been impoverished. He didn't know how to read, and he was ashamed of that. But the largest, strongest, biggest guy in his command group raised his hand. And that gave him the bravery. It gave him the strength to raise his own hand and say, yeah, I'm illiterate, I can't read. And because he did that, he was able to get the tutoring and the special classes to become perfectly literate in more than 3 languages. And he made a great life for himself. So sometimes we catch bravery from other people. So one person calmly ordering the vegan option can actually make it easier for the next person to try that. One person bringing a beautiful plant-based dish can change what other people expect or feel comfortable asking for. One person saying, yeah, I've been eating plant-based, I'm happy to bring you something, that can make the next conversation so much less awkward. And it's not about controlling what any other person does. It's about, it's really about refusing to disappear. And it's about taking some leadership role and allowing yourself to be a useful influence. Now, in the New York Times article that kind of brought this whole episode up, one of the examples was, quote, she called herself the frugal friend. And at first, the frugal friend seems to be unusual. She's the one suggesting the less expensive plan. She's the one admitting that certain kinds of spending doesn't fit her priorities. She's talking about her financial goals. And over time, she might become a person that other people come to for advice or to talk about. And that's a helpful model. What if you became the plant-based friend, even if you are not 100% vegan or 100% plant-based? The plant-based friend, the one who knows which restaurants have really tasty options, the one who brings a dish that helps people enjoy vegetables or fruits or grains, the one who makes the first suggestion, the one who makes it fun, demonstrates that eating plant-based can be really normal and really generous and satisfying. Someone has to make that first slightly awkward suggestion. Someone has to say, could we try this place? Or, we tried that before. I'm gonna bring something and we can all just eat at my place. Someone has to say, this matters a lot to me. Have you ever thought about it? So that person does not have to be loud or dogmatic or perfect in any way. They just have to be willing to be seen making a different choice. So this week I wanted to offer a couple questions. First, what is contagious in the food culture around you? Look at your family and your friends and your workplace. These coffee drinks with a lot of creams and syrups in them. I'm not trying to be cute, that saying I don't know what they are. I actually don't know what they are 100%. I know people love them, and they did not exist when I was young. I swear they did not exist when I was young. So it's something that's contagious. Normal people are drinking these high-calorie coffee drinks all the time. Also, the energy drinks, those didn't exist when I was young, I don't think, outside of basic Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew was the most caffeinated one I remember when I was young. So anyway, what's contagious in the food culture around you? And second, what are you signaling with food that you might not even believe anymore? Are you signaling that you're easygoing? Are you signaling that it doesn't matter what other people do? Or are you signaling that tradition matters a lot? Maybe you're signaling things that you do believe, and maybe you're signaling things that you've just been signaling a long time and you don't even notice it. And third, what do you want to signal? What do you want to have contagious around you? Maybe you want to spread the idea that vegan food can be simple and easy. Or maybe you want to spread the idea that vegan food is beautiful and that it's helpful to the environment, to the earth. Maybe you want to spread the idea that animals, compassion towards animals, the ethical treatment of animals is extremely important and goes behind everything we're doing invisibly. Or maybe you want to spread the idea that a person can be polite and gracious and fun and still ask for what she needs without apology. So what's contagious in the food culture around you that you've inherited? What are you signaling with food that you might not even believe anymore? And what do you want to spread? You don't have to overhaul your life this week. It's just, as everything else we do here, it's a matter of dialing in our thoughts, taking responsibility for where we exist in this complicated interpersonal dynamic of people and culture and business and sustainability. If you're just starting out, or if you're just starting back, your first job isn't to change anyone else's food culture, obviously. It's to find or build that small pocket of culture that supports you and your ideas. So one recipe that excites you, one account to follow on Instagram or YouTube that makes it feel doable, one podcast like this to put on, to download and share with others to talk about once a week. That would be great. And having one friend maybe who is open to what you're doing. That's enough to begin with. And if you're further along, you can choose one place to be a little less passive. You can be the person who suggests the restaurant. You can be the one that brings the dish. You can be the one that phones the host ahead of time and says, listen, I'm vegan. If you're not serving anything vegan, I can certainly bring something for myself and some others. You can be the one to make the meal, bring the book, share the documentary, and that's how culture changes. Repeated examples, people peeping up, people lifting their head above the parapet and saying, oh, by the way, so as this article that I'm going to link to from the New York Times said, a friend group can change a lot when one person says, that's not in my budget. The food culture of a family or friend group can also change when one person says, I'm making more plant-based choices now, or I'm not interested in eating animals anymore. Maybe someone else will actually be relieved. Maybe someone has actually been waiting for permission to care a little bit more. Maybe somebody needed to try something different, but they weren't really ready until they saw you start first. Yes, you may be catching the food culture that's around you, but you can also become part of what spreads next. So the question is veganism contagious? Well, I guess that's really up to us. And I think that's a good reason to veg your best.
Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.